October 31st, 1999, Halloween. For EgyptAir Flight 990, it was just another day. The Boeing 767 stood ready, its destination, Cairo, Egypt. The Los Angeles International Airport bustled with energy. 217 souls destined for Cairo. Businessmen, families, and tourists. None could have predicted the horror that awaited. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the tarmac. For the passengers and crew of Flight 990, the journey began like any other. Another routine flight into the coming night. Each passenger carried their own story. John and Susan Smith, a young couple on their honeymoon, Ahmed Hassan, a businessman returning home, Mrs. Johnson, finally taking the trip to Egypt she had dreamed of. The flight attendants guided passengers to their seats. The engines roared as the plane taxied to the runway. EgyptAir Flight 990 was airborne, soaring into the night, carrying its unsuspecting passengers towards a fate no one could have imagined. Unbeknownst to all on board, the clock was ticking. Captain Ahmed El-Habashi, a veteran pilot, calmly went through his routine. His co-pilot, Gamil Al-Batouti, sat beside him. Everything seemed normal, routine. Outside, the plane soared into the night. Below, the dark expanse of the Atlantic Ocean stretched out. The passengers settled into their flights. But in the cockpit, fate had begun to play its hand. EgyptAir Flight 990 soared into the night sky. Below, the cityscape of Los Angeles shrunk. The plane ascended smoothly, its engines a reassuring hum. Inside, the flight attendants sprang into action. Captain El-Habashi made the usual announcements. The plane leveled off, cruising at 33,000 feet. The vastness outside was both exhilarating and humbling. The aroma of food wafted through the cabin. Passengers perked up at the prospect of a hot meal. The flight attendants began their service. The gentle clinking of cutlery filled the air. In the cockpit, the mood was relaxed. The plane seemed to almost fly itself. The autopilot was engaged, its green lights blinking reassuringly. Outside, the moon cast an ethereal glow on the plane's wings. The stars twinkled invitingly. The world seemed at peace. But this tranquility was about to be shattered. A silent drama was about to unfold. The clock ticked on, each second bringing EgyptAir Flight 990 closer to its destiny. The calm was deceptive, a mere prelude to the storm. High above the Atlantic, EgyptAir Flight 990 cruised through the night sky. Passengers slept, read, or chatted quietly. In the cockpit, Captain El-Habashi had left his seat. Then, without warning, the plane lurched violently. The nose dipped sharply, sending a jolt through the cabin. Passengers' eyes flew open, confusion and unease growing. In the cockpit, alarms blared. The plane was plummeting towards the ocean below. Panic spread through the cabin. Passengers gripped their armrests, their knuckles white with fear. The cries of children pierced the air. The flight attendants struggled to maintain order. The plane bucked and shuddered. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. In the cockpit, Al-Batouti fought a losing battle. The plane hurtled towards its watery grave. Captain El-Habashi rushed back into the cockpit. He joined the desperate fight to save the plane. But their efforts seemed futile. The plane refused to respond. Outside, the ocean rushed closer. The sound of the wind was deafening. Passengers gasped for breath, their eyes wide with terror. A routine flight was about to end in unimaginable tragedy. The cockpit voice recorder captured the final words. A voice, calm amidst the chaos, repeated, "I rely on God." Then, with a deafening roar, EgyptAir Flight 990 slammed into the Atlantic Ocean. The impact shattered the plane into a million pieces. The wreckage disappeared beneath the waves. The cold waters of the Atlantic closed over the wreckage. EgyptAir Flight 990 had become a tomb. News of the crash sent shockwaves across the globe. Families huddled around television sets. The United States Coast Guard launched a massive search and rescue operation. Ships and aircraft scoured the area. But as the hours turned into days, the grim reality set in. The search transitioned into a recovery operation, each recovered body a testament to the fragility of life. Amidst the wreckage, two orange devices stood out, the black boxes. These devices held the key to unlocking the mystery. The black boxes were carefully retrieved. They were rushed to a secure facility. The world waited, hoping for answers. The investigation was meticulous and exhaustive. The world was watching, waiting for an explanation. The cockpit voice recorder yielded its secrets first. Investigators listened intently to the final moments. A voice, calm amidst the chaos, broke the silence. It was First Officer Al-Battuti, repeating, "I rely on God." The flight data recorder told a chilling story of the plane's final descent. The plane had fallen out of the sky. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together. The whispers from the deep only deepened the mystery. The investigation into the crash was complex. The wreckage was scattered across the Atlantic Ocean. The language barrier added another layer of complexity. The chilling audio recording captivated the world. The repeated utterances of "I rely on God" became a focal point. What was Al-Battuti trying to convey? The world waited anxiously for answers. As the investigation progressed, the NTSB began to focus on the actions of First Officer Al-Battuti in the moments leading up to the crash. The flight data recorder showed that he had deactivated the autopilot and initiated the plane's steep dive while Captain El-Habashi was out of the cockpit. Furthermore, the control inputs recovered from the wreckage suggested that Al-Battuti had actively worked against Captain El-Habashi's attempts to regain control of the aircraft. The evidence, while circumstantial, pointed towards a deliberate act, a chilling possibility that sent shockwaves through the aviation world. The NTSB in their preliminary report concluded that the crash was a result of the first officer's actions, but stopped short of declaring it a suicide. The report cited the lack of a clear motive, the absence of a suicide note, and Al-Battuti's seemingly normal behavior leading up to the flight as reasons for their caution. However, the seeds of doubt had been sown. The possibility of a deliberate act, whether driven by personal demons, mental instability, or something more sinister, hung over the investigation, casting a long shadow over Al-Battuti's memory. The NTSB's findings were met with outrage in Egypt. The Egyptian government, along with EgyptAir officials, vehemently rejected the notion that Al-Battuti, a respected pilot with a spotless record, would deliberately crash the plane. They accused the NTSB of bias, cultural insensitivity, and a rush to judgment. The Egyptian investigators presented their own theory, focusing on a possible mechanical failure, specifically a malfunction in the plane's elevator control system. They argued that a mechanical malfunction could explain the plane's sudden dive and the pilot's inability to regain control. The Egyptian government launched a vigorous campaign to clear Al-Battuti's name, portraying him as a hero who fought bravely to save the plane until the very end. They pointed to his years of service, his unblemished record, and his devotion to his family as evidence of his character and his commitment to his profession. The clash between the American and Egyptian authorities, once a matter of professional disagreement, escalated into a full-blown diplomatic row, fueled by national pride, cultural differences, and a shared sense of grief and loss. The investigation into the crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 became a tale of two narratives, two conflicting interpretations of the same tragic event. The NTSB, relying on their analysis of the black box data and the wreckage, pointed towards a deliberate act by the first officer. The Egyptian authorities, driven by their belief in Al-Battuti's innocence and their determination to protect his reputation, focused on a possible mechanical failure. The disagreement strained relations between the United States and Egypt, two countries with a long and complex history. The families of the victims, caught in the crossfire, were left to grapple with the conflicting narratives, their grief compounded by the lack of a definitive answer. The crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 became a symbol of the challenges of international cooperation, the persistence of cultural misunderstandings, and the enduring power of grief and loss. The truth, elusive and contested, remained buried somewhere beneath the waves, a tragic reminder of the mysteries that still haunt our skies. The NTSB's suggestion of a possible deliberate act by al-Battuti sent shockwaves through the aviation world. The idea that a seasoned pilot would intentionally down a plane, taking the lives of 217 innocent people, was almost unfathomable. Yet the evidence, however circumstantial, seemed to point in that direction. The suicide theory hinged on the assumption that al-Battuti was grappling with personal demons or mental health issues that led him to take his own life and the lives of those on board. Some speculated about financial troubles, family problems, or a possible terminal illness that al-Battuti might have kept hidden. Others pointed to the cultural stigma surrounding suicide in Egyptian society, suggesting that al-Battuti might have chosen this method to spare his family from shame. Could a man, respected in his profession and loved by his family, harbor such darkness within him? The lack of a suicide note or any prior indication of suicidal tendencies made the theory difficult to accept for many. Al-Battuti's behavior leading up to the crash, as described by colleagues and family, was entirely normal. He had been in good spirits, looking forward to returning home after the flight. Section 2. Mechanical failure or sabotage. While the NTSB leaned towards pilot suicide, the Egyptian authorities presented a starkly different explanation: mechanical failure. They pointed to a history of problems with the Boeing 767's elevator control system, suggesting that a similar malfunction could have caused the EgyptAir Flight 990 tragedy. Their theory centered on the possibility that a mechanical failure, perhaps a jam in the elevator control system, had sent the plane into its fatal dive. They argued that al-Battuti's words, "I rely on God," were not a confession of guilt, but rather a desperate prayer uttered as he fought a losing battle to regain control of the failing aircraft. Adding another layer of complexity to the investigation was the possibility of sabotage. The crash occurred during a time of heightened geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, and some speculated that EgyptAir Flight 990 could have been the target of a terrorist attack. However, no credible evidence of a bomb or any other form of sabotage was ever found. The FBI, after an extensive investigation, ruled out terrorism, concluding that there was no evidence to suggest foul play. Section 3. Unanswered questions, enduring mysteries. Over 2 decades have passed since that fateful night when EgyptAir Flight 990 vanished from the radar, taking with it the lives of 217 souls and leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Despite exhaustive investigations and countless hours of analysis, the true cause of the crash remains a mystery. The conflicting conclusions of the NTSB and the Egyptian authorities, each presenting compelling but ultimately inconclusive evidence, only deepened the mystery. The lack of a definitive answer has fueled endless speculation, conspiracy theories, and a lingering sense of unease surrounding the tragedy. The families of the victims, forever haunted by the loss of their loved ones, have had to grapple with the absence of closure. They have been left to navigate a labyrinth of conflicting reports, cultural sensitivities, and the frustrating realization that some questions might never have definitive answers. The crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life, the limitations of technology, and the enduring power of mystery. It is a tragedy that continues to resonate, a haunting echo in the vast expanse of our skies. A legacy of loss. The crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 left an indelible mark. For the families of the 217 souls lost, life was forever altered. Their grief was compounded by the mystery surrounding the crash. The crash site became a place of mourning, a watery grave. Memorials in the US and Egypt stand as solemn reminders of the tragedy. Section 2. The unanswered questions linger. The lack of a definitive answer has allowed speculation and conspiracy theories to flourish. The internet is awash with theories, each more outlandish than the last. Was it suicide, sabotage, a government cover-up? The questions linger, fueled by the absence of a universally accepted truth. The crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 serves as a stark reminder of the limits of our understanding.